Somehow a certain kind of magic happened during the expedition. In fact, I had a number of letters from different people after the expedition explaining that it had some kind of spiritual experience on that expedition. There was just something special about it.
Trips into the jungle, and I'm looking for the kind of girl or guy who is, you know, likes the outdoors, is adventurous, and who likes to wear leather.
So I don't know if Ben knows this, but this is my first cave. Other than, like, you know, the really small, the ones that aren't really caves.
I'm hoping it's a little cooler on the inside than it is on the outside. I'm dying out here. In fact, it's gonna be a while. Anybody want soup?
Actually, an Austrian scientist named Helmut Soup. He's a great guy.
Get it on.
I found that there were so many wild characters and incredible legends and pieces of this myth that to take it all on was a really overwhelming task. But it had to be done. The story has to be told. It's just that amazing. The project leader of the 1976 expedition's name is Stan Hall, and he's currently living in Dunbar, Scotland, which is pretty close to the capital, Edinburgh. So Matt and I traveled up there in the summer of 2007 in order to get the facts straight from him. And of course, it was great. We were able to experience a lot of the wonderful culture that Edinburgh and well, Scotland in general has to offer.
It was found by a student biologist from Glasgow University who happened to be chasing around a little beetle on top of the guano down inside a main cave, when suddenly he unearthed a little bit of a shard of a pottery. So he called others over, and sure enough, and Padre Pedro Porras of the Catholic University happened to be down inside the cave, and he looked at that, and then he looked at the nearby wall and saw a bunch of stones, but not in the same material as the actual material of the wall itself, and he thought, oh, this is curious. So they started moving the stones, and lo and behold, they opened up this a tomb area. And inside was a seated cadaver, the skeleton of a seated cadaver, which immediately fell apart as soon as somebody touched it. So it obviously been there a long time. Ultimately, the dating techniques showed that that tomb was from 15 to 1800 years BC in age.
Stan Hall is one of a series of people that believes that this treasure of all treasures is hidden in this cave or cave system in Ecuador, in eastern Ecuador, coming off the slopes of the Andes Mountains. His expedition in 1976 consisted of over 100 researchers, scientists, cavers, including, of all people, Neil Armstrong of original moonwalk fame. He was the figurehead of the project.
Well, Neil had sent a letter saying that he considered it not a favor but an honor to accept the position of honorary president of the expedition, and God willing and time permitting, he hoped to play some active part. Well, this was far beyond any expectations we had.
The other possibility I found as I dug deeper in the story was that this treasure might not exist literally in a physical sense, but rather figuratively in more of like a textbook example of a shamanic experience or a trance state. So in order to get more information on this, we traveled to southern England to a little town called Bath in order to interview a highly respected journalist author named Hancock.
I've spent many years, the last 15 to 20 years, working on issues of alternative history, if you like. Could there have been a forgotten episode in the human story? Could there have been a lost civilization? When we read in the Bible of the flood of Noah and we read in Plato of the story of Atlantis, are we actually dealing with references to real events? And I've spent a great deal of time looking at those problems, and I've published a whole series of books. The best known was Fingerprints of the Gods, which argue that there could indeed have been a lost civilization.
Graham Hancock confirmed our suspicions that this treasure, this metal library, might not actually be a physical reality, but more of a mental construct that has been experienced by all manners of people throughout all time since humanity began, really, especially while in caves.
It's well known that if you isolate yourself in caves, you begin to experience sensory deprivation, and in states of sensory deprivation it's very easy to slip into a trance state. Those who fall spontaneously into trance might not know that they've made that transition. There might be a seamless connection. The break between this world and the other world might be seamless to them because they did not deliberately induce that state of trance. It just happened to them, and it's continuous with their everyday reality. One moment they're in everyday reality, the next moment they're in another kind of reality altogether, and they've transited seamlessly between the two. They don't know why it happened or what happened, and they have no reason to believe that they're in another state of consciousness, but they are. One thing that's really important to emphasize about trance states is that they are utterly, overwhelmingly convincing. More real than real is how these are often described.
So we set out into the jungles of Ecuador, just looking for some truth in all of this crazy story.
All of this to get to the Walmart parking lot.
It was a magnificent experience. Everything about it was wonderful. We came across spectacular waterfalls. We hiked through huge canyons, river canyons, with all sorts of wonderful wildlife and plant life.
The waterfalls were great.
Yeah, they were great. They were
the
fantastic.
Amount of water pressure coming down, just pushing back on you. Like, there was no wind anywhere else in that valley except for right up by the falls, and the amount of water falling down was just gusting out. It blew right through my Gore-Tex jacket.
Right through it.
Yeah, like it didn't even stop. The water would just hit the jacket, laughed, and then pushed through into my bones.
Hiking through the jungle was marvelous, fantastic. It wasn't always comfortable. Of course, you can imagine the kind of insects you run into in there, and the weather is really unpredictable and usually wet.
And it's gonna rain.
It's gonna rain.
Yeah. Funny thing, rainforest.
Yeah.
We are gonna get totally soaked. You think I'd get used to that, but it still amuses me.
And the caves were also wet as well. We were expecting all this. It was spectacular, really phenomenal. Although I'd say if you aren't a fan of massive tarantulas or hundreds of bats whizzing by your head or squeezing through half-submerged passages on your hands and knees, I'd say this trip isn't for you. Is there another worldly treasure in the cave? Some would say yes, some would say no. Some would say go see for yourself. I know that for us, we've barely been able to scratch the surface on this, what I believe to be one of the best stories of our time. And to me, the most incredible part is it's a complete mystery to everybody. Nobody knows about this. It's hidden in history. And that in and of itself makes it a goldmine of a story.